From the heart of Maine, this is the DuView podcast.
All right, and welcome to this week's episode of the DuView podcast. I am your host, Du, a.k.a. Ryan Dumont, and it's a solo episode this week, folks, just me. Welcome to episode number 35. That being said, it's going to be a real freestyle type of episode. I just have a couple of things I want to talk about and riff on, and just kind of give you guys a new piece of content here without just recycling an older episode or something like that. I apologize for skipping a week here. It's just been pretty busy for old Du. That being said, I'll go into some of that in just a second, but the real point of this episode is just kind of reflect on, kind of looking back at the year. We're in November now, and so we have about to have an election. Literally, this episode is coming out on Election Day, so I have some thoughts on the upcoming election. Can't have this podcast without having some political elements to it because it's a huge part of who I am. Obviously, as we've talked about, as the name implies, it's the DuView podcast, so we're talking about my views. But that said, we'll talk about some political stuff here in just a minute, and also going to talk about a lot of happier stuff too, not just all the humdrum, like the saving of democracy and all that stuff. Some personal stuff and some other cool things that have come along recently, as well as some what I've been listening to, some new music that I really want to share with everybody, and a bunch of other stuff too. So to get into it, I'm going to start this, as the name of the episode implies, the DuView podcast, episode 35. This is 26. And so I just celebrated my 26th birthday, and so, it's a weird, 26 is a weird one. It's really probably for a lot of people not a happy one if you're a dependent on anybody's insurance, because at least in the United States, you can no longer be, on your parents' insurance basically anymore once you turn 26. And if you know anything about the insurance industry, is that the United States has some of the highest health insurance costs in the entire world. So that's great. Thanks, guys. And it doesn't have to be that expensive. It could be a lot cheaper. There are a lot of simple things that could be changed in the legislative side of things to make things easier, and also just kind of keep the insurance companies in check too, because they're as much of part of the problem as much as they are part of the solution. And that's as much as why you need a good public and private option to help counterbalance each other. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. But I did, but it is and it isn't actually, because I did have to actually go out and find insurance for myself, which was really an interesting process. And it is, well, I won't say it was terribly difficult, but it also wasn't easily accessible either. I felt like I really had to have almost taken a course or something in buying insurance to truly understand it. I don't think I'm that dumb in terms of understanding it. I mean, I know what I want in terms of like deductible and all those types of things, but in terms of how it's presented, it's very much, I won't say the platform through through things is exactly user friendly, but I'm sure that's different for everybody, and depending if you use an insurance agent or not. But that being said, it was definitely an interesting process, and I can understand why so many people in the United States get fed up with how things are, currently in the navigation of buying insurance and, being able to get improved for different insurances depending if you live in a certain state or coverages or all of these different, intricacies that it almost feels like you need to be, almost secretly clued in to truly understand. But that being said, that's not the only, part of turning 26 that occurred. It's just accepting the fact that you're getting another year older. And I know age is a number and all that type of stuff, but you do at some point, you can't just not reflect back at all, because I don't know, you just got to keep things in check and just make sure, are you where you, want to be? Are you where you're at? And that's been always kind of a thing I've been really kind of kicking around my head quite a bit, these last few years through the pandemic and whatnot. And it's like, you're 26 years old now. You're 4 years away from 30. That's a big number, but at the end of the day, I'm not saying it's like trying to say it's the end of the world or anything like that by any means, but it's definitely definitely a change in perspective for, somebody who's, coming out of their, early 20s and is, really kind of seen the middle part of the early 20s, whisk away due to either lockdown or pandemic life or just whatever. But that being said, it truly is interesting to see, sitting here looking back, when I'm not trying to buy insurance or do something like that, of where I'm at versus, you really can't compare, but just where you're at versus where everybody else is at, where you're at versus where you'd think you'd be at in your own mind. It just, like I said, I'm not saying I'm, really comparing and contrasting myself, to my own expectations or to anybody else's or to whatever. But I'm just saying I'm just taking a look back and it's like, when I was, a freshman at Coney High School, that I think I'd be back here where I am today and probably doing what I'm doing. And the answer is most definitely no. And so that's something that I've recently more or less kind of come to terms with in a lot of way, which I'll get into in just a second, because like I said, I, in a lot of ways, and this has been something that has taken me, I guess, 3+ years, and I'm still not completely over it, I guess, in some certain content and aspects, but it's been 3 years rationalizing. I really, in a lot of ways, had my, went from having, whatever in my mind was at the time my dream job. I was running a presidential campaign. As far as someone in the political or with any type of political aspirations, I mean, that right out of college is, like I said, I've said before in other episodes, unheard of. And so it's just been coming to terms with that. I'm in a different, basically, to quote a few folks that I've talked to about this recently, I'm in a different season of my life now. I'm in a different season of my life now, and that's an interesting one I've been wrestling with, and I hope when I say that, that's why I said it twice. I hope you guys think about that one too. I'm in a different season of my life now, and that I think that's where a lot of people are at in their middle 20s, late 20s into 30s. You're adjusting seasons. You're changing your altitude. You're changing the pitch in your sails a little bit because life is different. You have different needs. You have different life partners. You have different, jobs. You may have to have started jobs a few times. There's a lot of different if and or buts or different factors that go into the 20s. And like as I've kind of done to the best of my ability, considering my 20s were in a pandemic. But it's try new things, experience new things, figure out what you want to do, all that type of stuff. And so I guess getting back to I do want to do a full episode on the campaign life and really get into depth on that at some point later on in the next few months. But that being, I don't want to drag this episode into that too much again. But I've come to terms with the fact that I'm just in a different season of my life now. Not to say that all my experience and knowledge and all the things that I learned and all the people that I met and all that type of stuff doesn't still matter. It does. And you take that stuff with you and you use what's good and you leave the other stuff behind, I guess. But and then went from that to into my season of teaching, being a literal season of a year, in that aspect, and now being into the season of my life where I am a 26-year-old electrician, and so that's where you're at, and that's just not saying that's just where you have to accept it, but that's where you're at, and that's the game you're playing now. And so, to have, any animosity or have any, ill will or whatever towards, the past is in a lot of ways, frankly, unhealthy. But also it's just, you don't need to waste your mental capacity on that. Just need to accept that has happened. That is, as it is said, that ship has sailed. And, we are where we are now versus we were where we are where we are. And so that's just where you kind of have to, or where I rather have just kind of have to accept it to where I'm at. And so, as the name says in this episode, this is 26. This is due at 26. This is where I am. And so that's a really cool and unique thing to be able to do with having a podcast is that I can, verbally reflect and share that with you guys because, that's really been my thoughts. And again, I don't try to claim to be the wisest person in the room by any means, but like with the things I've seen in my short life and the things I've done, it's just if I do share anything or if I give anybody a moment to stop and think and better themselves, good for them. Don't make the same mistakes or don't do the same exact things I did or don't if you can in a way not hold on to those animosities or whatever and just kind of let that stuff go, let bygones kind of in a way be bygones and take the good from it and learn from it and not make the same mistakes again. That's what you got to do. That's the true survival instinct in working society or anyway, or in the workplace, at least in my opinion, But that being said, the electrical life is going pretty well so far. doing a lot of different stuff, anything from standby generators to full electrical house services to house rewires. We've done a really done a little bit of everything. And so, like I said, I'm in school for that. Just actually had a midterm for one of my classes, which went pretty well, all things considered. Um, and as my good friend and twice over podcast guest Lucas Rushton said, "Well, buddy, you can't say you haven't been to math school now, because I am in fact very much in math school." So I used to have a running joke between, if any of my friends will remember this, well, I didn't go to no math school, but to preface, maybe a lack thereof of math abilities, but that stuff's really kind of coming, and if you train your brain the right way, you can pick it up. Like, I've never been the best math student by any means, but I'm making it work, and taking the extra time to to read the book and really do the extra work, because I'm doing it online. It's not like I'm attending a seminar or something like that with other students. It's just me kind of out there fending on my own in a lot of ways, and so I haven't taken a math class in, geez, specifically a math class since at least my junior year in high school. So that would have been in 2014. So it's been almost a decade since I've taken a math class, give or take. And it's because, like, I didn't take any math really in college because they didn't really require me to. There's a little bit of math in one of the science classes I took, but not anything to constitute a full blown trial of mathematics. But it's been interesting, but it's been good, and more than halfway through now, and just ready to get done with that class, on to the next, and just get to in-person classes next year, as I mentioned in the last episode with my good buddy Nick Dubord. Thanks again, Nick, for coming on. That was really great. Really appreciate that. And speaking of Nick and guests, gonna have more guests on too. It's not just gonna be all solo stuff here. I know that it's been kind of weird, with the release of some of the episodes and the breaks and stuff like that. And just like you said, it's been busy, folks. And that's kind of the next thing I, really want to get into, is just kind of the format of the podcast. And I know I mentioned a few things about that last episode, but I really want to kind of go into more detail about that here in just a second. So in terms of format, I've always tried to really keep things to, 2 episodes a month, like a bi-weekly type of format. And, that has been easy to do when I was able to stay caught up. And then between this past summer having COVID and dislocating an elbow, and just genuinely being busy between work and volunteering for Kara and all the other things I do in school now, on top of everything else, it's just, unfortunately, at some points made it hard to really meet that requirement. And, excuse me, I knew that going in, that I had a different job. I was teaching at the time and got out at 2 o'clock, and that made really having, an afternoon, podcast recording times very accessible. And, unfortunately and or fortunately, a lot of my guests are, working class people, and they work day jobs, and it's not as always easy for them to be out, for a certain time in the afternoon, on top of with my schedule. And so I've done my best to, maintain my constant and my promise, but I really do think as things get going here a little bit more, I'm going to swap over, like I've mentioned, I've gotten a new computer. And so pending some testing and a few other things, we're going to be, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan here, swapping to once a month, but with video. And I think my plan for that is to have that happen over the new year, after January, or December into January. And when we come back in 2023, with new episodes, or I'm not saying this is like a break or anything like that, but in 2023 we'll probably be swapped over to video once a month. And I think that that's a fair compromise in a lot of ways, because it's a little bit more editing for me. But it does give you something a little bit different to do. It's a little bit, and I understand. Like, again, my whole intention was for this podcast from the beginning was to have it be a video podcast. Like, things just were out of my control and out of my budget, I guess. You try to do the best you can when you're starting up something like this, and you do well in certain areas, and you make goofs in other areas, and that's like I said, that's the lesson learned. So you don't make those same mistakes next time. But anyway, regardless, and that being said, I also want to change my studio around a little bit to include a little bit more comfortable space. Like I said, I'm at a table, which is still a very unique and fun space as far as studios go, but like to make it a little bit more comfortable. I've got some extra chairs and a couch and some other stuff maybe potentially to bring in. And also with this new laptop, it allows me to have 4 microphones at a time instead of just 2. So that means I can have 3 guests and myself, or do roundtable episodes, or do some really cool stuff that I really have wanted to do for a while, but have just not been able to do really until now. And so that being said, too, I also feel as if it's time to kind of take the next step in a lot of ways. I didn't know if I really wanted to go after advertisements and really do all the stuff like you hear on some of the bigger podcasts, but I'm really kind of thinking that it might be time for that as well. And I'm like you said, I'm always upfront and honest with you guys. Like, those of you that can tune in every week are my backbone, and I'd prefer to let you guys know really what's going on right off than leave you guys guessing like, oh, what's he doing, like what's going on. So everything going on so far is good. It's just been really want to take things to the next step and really just get out to more people, really, instead of just being a local thing, really get out statewide and really get people talking about it. So again, that really comes down to two things: one, me getting more high profile guests on, me getting more businesses to take note and advertising and all that type of stuff. So with that being said, that's also kind of a call to you guys too. If you have a business, or if you know anybody who has a business that wants to try some advertising or anything like that, get them in touch with me. I mean, I'm pretty accessible. I have all the information. If you go to my link tree or any of my social media sites, you can send me a message, personal message me on Instagram or Facebook, or any of those types of platforms. And I also have the email in the description of the podcast profile page on any of the listening platforms as well. So you can get in touch with me there. DuView207 at gmail.com, I believe, is the email address there for anybody who really needs it. But anybody that maybe would like to advertise, and like I said, it's not going to be anything astronomical. Like I said, I'm a smaller, local, friendly neighborhood type of podcast. And so, but if you help us, take it to the next level, like I said, it's a trade off when it comes to advertising, as everybody knows. Like I said, you can rise with your with people, rise with things you believe in, fall with things you don't. Like that's that's the type of guy I am, the big collective. So that's another goal too, is to like I said, branch out and to get some advertising going as well. Not just to generate revenue, but to allow me to do more things with the podcast. Like I said, I don't everything that I put into it is out of my own pocket, and so it would be nice to, I mean, I guess in some ways recoup some of that in some capacity, but also allow me to, like have on higher profile guests, take trips, go places, because I don't always want to just be in the studio. I would like to hit the road with this for a couple episodes, because that would really be cool to do a couple episodes. Like I have this setup in mind to do from like the back of my pickup truck for live from the road, and so it just like I said, it helps. Like I said, it helps pay the bills that come along with doing all the cool stuff in the podcast world. And like I said, I'm always rooted in community too. Though I do sponsor a few community events, or I am a sponsor for a few community events, specifically for Kara's golf tournament and for their auction rather. You see my name on there, not Ryan Dumont, but the DuView podcast, because like I said, that's really the I want it to be more than just a podcast in a lot of ways too, folks. It really truly is. I want it to be a community force, and maybe perhaps a record label and a few other things under that umbrella. Because really, my passion at the end of the day, a lot of my passion is music, and I'll get into that, get into all my music passion in a minute, but you can tell whenever I have a fellow musician on as a guest, it's really, really a treat for me, because it's like get to really nerd out and bro out, or over the subject, because it's like I said, it's at the core for a lot of people. Music is so core to my existence. I wouldn't be who I am without music in a lot of ways. And like that's if I'm in a bad mood, go listen to music. You're happy, go listen to music. You're want to have a good day at work, go listen to some music. You want to have a good ride home, listen to some music. That's my, music's a medicine in a lot of ways for me and for a lot of other people too. But that said, um, I don't do music as a job, and as much as I'd love to, it's a side thing for me. And so one of the music things I do is I'm a DJ. I've been really if you have talked to anybody that I went to middle school or even high school with, it's been a passion for a while, and situations arose that maybe didn't allow me to shine in that capacity, being limited by the financials and the technology of my time, I guess, in a lot of ways. But now I've got a G-Dam full-blown setup, and I did a wedding. Did my first wedding, in fact, for my good buddy James Talalis, who is, as I've had on as a guest, and is also the voice of the intro that you hear every time you listen to the podcast. Jimbo is one of my dearest friends, and I was very honored when him and Christina asked me to DJ their wedding. They said, honestly, we didn't even ask anybody else because we wanted you. And I said, guys, you can't say these things to me and not expect me to cry. I said that quote a few times between the rehearsal dinner the night before and the actual wedding, and after the wedding for that matter as well. So they are as we speak on honeymoon in Hawaii. Congratulations, guys! Love you guys so much, and really bit the I gave you guys the official congratulations, but here's the official verbal congratulations anyway. Congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Uh, James Talalis. That's cool. Good for you guys. Really happy for you. And like the cool thing about this wedding, guys, and not to say that all weddings aren't really joyous events, but this was definitely a special one in a lot of ways. A lot of really cool, special people there. On top of the fact that I think just about everybody I've talked to who was there is still riding high off the happiness and good vibes that occurred over that weekend, being last weekend. And so it's really nice to really see just nothing but true joy, bliss, and just happiness come out of an event, and to be a part of that and bring, I guess in some aspects, bring part of that. Because like I said, it's when I do the DJing thing, I take it pretty seriously, and so and the same thing with the podcast. And in a lot of ways, unfortunately or fortunately, I'm kind of a perfectionist in certain sense, and sometimes you just got to take a step back, and that's kind of what I was getting at earlier with the presidential campaign, and doing the stuff and being in different seasons of your life too, is also just kind of taking a step back and wiping your brow and taking a breath and say, you know what, it doesn't have to be 100% perfect all the time. You know what? Sometimes 90%'s okay. You're not just sacrificing or taking less or doing less or not applying yourself 100%. It's just sometimes things just don't work out as you want. And so that's been a lesson too with these things, doing them for the first time. Sometimes you don't exactly, get to do what you want given some of the limitations of the reception space. I couldn't use turntables, which I was really looking forward to use, just given how I stream things and do things how I do them. But that wasn't a big deal. You know what? I made the most of it and did it, and you know what? I didn't let it bother me. And at the end of the day, we went out there, and I rigged things up as best as possible, and we had a great time. And that's just what I've had to learn to do. And so I've had to just kind of not be so rigid and adapt a little bit more. And I've been pretty adaptable for the most part, but it's just like when you get used to doing something and it's a learned habit, you just gotta sometimes go, you don't always do it this way, and you gotta get over things as they were or as they are, and just kind of find a new way of doing things in a lot of ways. And so that's what was cool about this wedding. Like I said, everybody was dancing the whole time, and if anybody needs a wedding DJ, I guess I'm technically for hire now. That's another thing on top of just trying some new stuff here. I really would like to do it more out in the community. Like I said, I play a pretty eclectic. It's some of the best songs you've never heard of in a lot of ways. Like when I get to go deep into my, I call it my crates. Deep into the, like that's how DJs used to play records. Obviously, it wasn't all electronic. Like you literally played records physically on turntables, like Grandmaster Flash or any of the guys, like something from Run DMC or something like that. Like physically like scratching wicka wicka wicka, that type of thing. But when I get to go deep into deep into the crates, so to speak, or deep into my, arsenal of music, it's really, you'll hear some stuff you'd never heard before, but you're gonna, try and Shazam it or whatever people do these days to figure out what songs are. You're jotting the lyrics down in your head as best you can, regardless if you had a couple drinks or not. So, that's what I'm kind of driving at, is that I'd really like to try to establish some type of local residency in some capacity at like one of the, I guess you could say, night spots in Maine somewhere, preferably in Kennebec County, Waterville, Hollowell, Augusta, something like that. I mean, it's not, like we don't have a lot of like big nightclubs, but there's like, like Easy Street Lounge and some really cool places that are down and around it, or, Corey Tap or whatever. So if anybody knows anything there, like I said, reach out and give me an audition, give me a shot. That's the cool thing about this, has been like trying it out once and really seeing how it went, and it went really well, and I really enjoyed it. And so really would like to do it more, and in an expanded capacity. But it's stand on street corners and do it, or you can do it where the people are, So that's just what I'm kind of getting at there. But again, thank you, Jim and Christina, for having me be a part of your special day, and congratulations to you guys. And it's really just been really cool to, come out as and come out in the capacity of another, hobby, and to, say, hey, I'm a DJ now, not to say anybody can do that, which obviously you can, but it was really just a unique experience there as well. And so that brings me to, kind of like the last point of reflection for the episode, I guess, is, like I said, it's just a short little rift of an episode, guys. We'll be back with a guest next episode. We'll be back on the regular track of things here for the rest of the new year, and hopefully have something really special planned for you guys here in December for the Christmas season. Really want to step things up now that I have this new laptop. And once I get, like I said, once I get things switched over here, guys, like I was just talking about, it's going to be, I think, a really enhanced experience, better than it already is. Not that the audio quality isn't already there, but we can do better. And that's the thing for me. Like I said, I really try to give it 100% as best I can when I can. And so that kind of leads me off to my last, really kind of a quote to kind of leave you guys with for the end of the episode. And this is kind of something that I've kind of tried to adapt in and work into my own life more recently as well, just because, like I said, being in a full blown adult is a little different than being a college student or doing this or doing that or whatever. So, just something to keep in mind. And so, quote being, in the days that I keep my gratitude higher than my expectations, well, I have really good days. One more time. And on the days that I keep my gratitude higher than my expectations, well, I have really good days. That's really good. Like I said, that's hit the nail on the head for me recently. And like I said, with everything that's gone on over the last few years, for some people, it's been like they act like nothing ever happened or whatever. But like I said, it's been quite a change for me. And so accepting that you are in a different place than you were a few years ago. Like I said, this is 26 now, and you're at a different point than you were before. And so as long as you keep you're content about what you do have, and you don't get too wound up about what you don't quite have yet, it'll come. Like that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like, yeah, of course I'd love for it to be 2025, and I'd love to be able to go for my journeyman's test or whatever, and be further along financially, and move out, and be out on my own and all that type of stuff, 125%. And yeah, I'd love to be able to do all that, but that stuff will come, and I just have to accept I am where I am right now. But it's not all bad. It's like I'm about my at the end of the day, my worst day is still better than a lot of people's, best days. And that's unfortunate, really, where we're at here, folks, in this in just the today's circumstances. I think people are really on edge more than they've ever been, and I guess it's kind of where I segue into some of the political talk as well. Is just I've never seen just such a group of whiny people, whiny about everything. It's just, guys, sometimes you got to just step up and do it yourselves. And I know that's applies to different political issues more than it does to others, but it's just like the government is not going to, and I mean, this is where I'm going to sound like, like a small government, under a microscope type person, but it's like, your government isn't there to provide everything and to be, don't get me wrong, it's there to make sure that, you're given a fair and equal opportunity, and that things are fair and just, and given it still has a lot of work to do in that capacity. But you got to also, if you want to see change, you got to be that change yourself. And I think a lot of people fail to understand that in a lot of ways. Like, you are not entitled to things getting better. Sometimes you have to be the one to make the start the fire in a lot of ways, or be the first spark of inspiration. And that's kind of the thing that I'm talking about here, at least for myself and my own personal plans in the future, but also, for this upcoming election. I'm really kind of disappointed in a lot of the slate of candidates that are out there in a lot of ways. Locally, I can't say too much. I think in Augusta, there's a really good slate of candidates. We had, our at least on my side of the river, our representative pass away, our state rep pass away, unfortunately, over the last year. And so there's been a vacancy in that seat. And I wish the best to the former city manager, Mr. Briggio. Wish you the best on your candidacy, as well as the other local candidates that are running for that seat. But at the governor's level is really an interesting one. And again, this episode's coming out on election day, so we'll see how things go in that capacity. I really would love to see Paul LePage not in the governor's mansion again. Like I said, I worked for Paul, decent guy, at the end of the day in certain capacities, but I think we need somebody with a little bit of a softer hand right now. And some of his views on some of the folks when it comes to Narcan and a few of these other recessive type of situations when it comes to overdoses and things like that is very just kind of disappointing. They've done a lot of good work in the Maine legislature in terms of like Good Samaritan laws and things like that, headed by some folks that actually live in my community. And so I've been really kind of proud of the work that they've done there to really, because at the end of the day, you should be trying to better people's lives, not worsen them. And it's like you can say, oh, you should just let them die, they're junkies or whatever, but who are you to say that? Again, like the same thing with like the abortion stuff. It's like, who are you to say that we can't have exceptions for, incest, rape, and, just terrible, terrible things? It's like, yeah, you never want to have certain things happen, but at the end of the day, they still do happen sometimes. It's like, and that doesn't mean we just, lock things away and tell people, well, no, that's too damn bad. It's like, again, at the end of the day, you can't say that just everybody is beyond saving. It's like, who are you to say that? What qualifies you to play God? I guess in certain ways, who are you to say that person cannot be saved? And like I said, I'm not trying to get all evangelical on it for a minute because I'm not. That's not who I am. But the point I'm trying to make here is that I really, when we elect our officials, I'm not saying we need to have soft elected officials. I'm saying we need to have compassionate elected officials, and compassion is not equivalent to weakness. And that's the narrative I don't like. Like I like the kind of the concept of the militant hippie to illustrate this. And what I mean by that is that everybody sees the hippie as like, hey, peace and love, man. Like, we're not gonna like start problems, and like that's the way I approach a lot of situations. Like, I'm not out here to cause problems. As far as I'm concerned, we could be best of friends. However, the second you cause problems or you're disrespectful or something like that, flip the switch. I am no longer nice to you anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying we have to be, everybody's best buddy, but just like some general courtesy, just be some general, just being generally like courteous to people. So that's the word. Some just general basic respect, getting that back, because that's not here anymore. That's very much lost in a lot of ways, and it's really too bad. Because I don't know, I can't put one single blame on it, but it's disgusting to see some of the political rhetoric that's being used. And again, I'm sure there are Democratic candidates that are doing too, but some of the things that some of these Republican candidates they're just spewing, and it's harming our democracy. It's harming, and that's one thing I want to talk about too is these candidates that are up here this time, and not specifically just Paul LePage, but other folks that are running, like Herschel Walker down in Georgia, and some, and Dr. Oz, and some of these people that are running that are truly, literally, like, harmful people to democracy. Like, the policies, like, if you just look at the things they stand for, and this is like, oh, Ryan, you're preaching. No, like, again, I went to school, I studied the Constitution, I worked for the Republican Party, and I left when I saw things were going down a road towards more of a fascist type of deal, all right? Like, a lot of people get nervous when you say things like that, but it's the truth. All right? When you're pushing towards full, dictatorial control by the state, that's fascism, folks. When you want to be the grand poobah, you want to be in charge of the show, and if that show is the Trump show, and you want to have the Trump show and no other shows on TV, and you want to control the message and have one unilateral message, that's Big Brother, folks. That's a dictatorship. That's not American democracy or the Democratic Republic, or we're not a democracy, or whatever, how people want to get technical on it. It's like you have to look at the content of some of these people. You can say, oh, Raphael Warnock, blah, 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 blah. I'm not talking about these other folks. Someone who worked for the Democrats can go and critique the Democrats. I'm a former Republican critiquing Republicans. And again, I have an authority on that. I really do. I do. And again, I look at these slate of Republican candidates, and I'm disappointed. You know, my biggest concern with Paul LePage, when I worked for Paul, he hadn't spent that much time with the Trump folks. Now he was Trump's grand poobah in Maine and the general elector, and the guy who's running his campaign was my boss at the state party when I worked for the Maine State GOP, Joe Turcotte. Joe's a good guy. I like Joe. I'd still go have a cup of coffee with Joe. But, I know that we definitely have some disagreements on certain things. And Joe, if you'd like to come, if you're listening, if you'd like to come on the podcast and talk about it, you're more than welcome, buddy. Love to talk with you. But that being said, guys, it's just I have some real genuine concerns about these people that they're putting up in front of us. And hell, one of them I even went to college with down in New Hampshire, Caroline Levitt. Caroline, what are you doing? I know this episode comes on Election Day, and I should have said something earlier. But what are you doing, girl? I had so much respect for you. So to give some context, folks, she and I started co-founded along with Dan Flatley, Tom Mannion, and a few other really quality folks. We started the St. Anselm College Broadcasting Club, and we were about good, tight journalism, reporting on what happened, giving the students of St. Anselm College a voice. On a virtual platform versus over just like a print platform like the newspaper. And it was great. She was good enough friend in college. We, like I said, worked together to keep the broadcasting club going. She ended up as the president, me as the vice president. And like I said, we worked through that. And, I'm not going to sit here and just, critique and, be a dick about things. But it's like, some of the things I've seen her run on, as she's running against Chris Pappas down in New Hampshire, and the Pappas folks have, probably from what I've seen from my reporting, have made some blunders on their front too. But some of the things she's running on are just not what the Republican Party is about. She's running on some populist Trump stuff, and I'm sorry, but we don't have time for that. And if that ends up being what the people of New Hampshire want, that's what they want, I suppose. But I think it's going to come back to bite him, unfortunately. And Caroline, this Trump thing, I know you worked for the guy and whatever, but the guy's in how many court cases right now across the country? You can sit there and say, oh, it's the fake news media, and go on Newsmax or whatever platform, whatever. And, jeez, it's just disappointing. And I guess that's where I'm at. And this is from my, I guess, whatever capacity I have as a former, presidential campaign state director, political operative for the GOP. Like I said, I've done the work, I've run the campaigns and done that type of stuff, and it's, like I said, just really disappointing the fact that, these, like I said, folks like her that I used to call friends have gone down the full path of the Trump populist fascist movement. It's really too bad. Like I said, I'm a fiscal conservative through and through. I like a nice tight budget. I like a good, strong military. I like guns, but I also really care about people, too. I'm not separating families at the border and leaving kids in space blankets and, doing just some nasty, terrible thing, getting rid of abortion. And just like I said, as a former Republican, abortion should be safe and rare, and you got to have exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother, health and life of the mother. I'm sorry. You just have to. It's just you can't say that you care about people in any capacity and then continue to pass legislation that actually negatively impact people's lives. Donald Trump repealed many protections for clean air and clean water. He gutted the Environmental Protection Agency, something that was started by Richard Nixon. Again, these are as I've talked about this on the podcast 100 times, guys. These aren't real Republicans. They're wolves in turds clothing. All right, they're it's just it's this Herschel. They're all walking hypocrites. Herschel Walker claiming to be against abortion while he's had several. It's like, guy, it's like you can't claim to be something that you're not, and that's what a lot of this populist fascist stuff is. It's just uneducated crap. And it's taking us down. And again, when you look at and that's what I'm getting at, guys. When you look at your slate of candidates, it's like, who are we even nominating? That's the biggest problem. It's like we're basically letting the inmates run the asylum. We're letting the people who used to be in the fringes of the parties in this country run things. And it's like, no, we need to get back to the goddamn middle of the road. That's where we belong. Like, it's unbelievable that we have people that are running for office that can't even accept the fact that the presidential election last time around ended how it ended just because their guy lost. Like, that's what I'm saying by people are whiners. That's one of the points I mean. It's like, my side lost. Yeah. It's like, get over it. Regroup. Change your obviously your strategy sucked. Go back out there and change it up. Oh, they cheated. Yeah, okay. Again, you've changed from being the fair and the semi-fair Republican playbook to the Donald Trump whiny criminal playbook. Again, even if you just look at the guy and the folks that want to be around him, why would you want to be around a guy who learned everything from Roy Cohn? And if you don't want to say, oh, well, Donald Trump was fine, he's an angel, he's a saint, well, look at his mentor, Roy Cohn, and that's documented. That's documented history right there. He has a long connection with the Trumps. He has a long connection with organized crime in New York City and New Jersey. The guy was a criminal, and his mentee, young Trump or old Trump now, is also a criminal. And we'll see how all this comes out in the wash. But like I said, disappointing for a lot of this stuff. And I don't really care. Like I said, a lot of any of the type of backlash stuff, whatever. I don't rightly care. It's just at a point where we really need to be. We almost lost. Like I said, people are going to say you're being dramatic, Ryan. No, I'm not. We almost lost this country a few years ago, and like I said, I've done a lot of work in my time to ensure the health and the prosperity of democracy in this country, or at least in the state of Maine and or in New Hampshire, I suppose, in a certain capacity. But it's really, like I said, really disappointing where we're at, and folks, people got to step up and I guess get mad, for lack of a better term. It's like, have some don't get mad at at each other. Get mad at the people that are making these dog shit decisions and that are actually making your lives worse. And it's like, but actually look at who's making the decisions. Don't just believe the Super PAC commercial you see on TV that says, Jared Golden did this or Bruce Poliquin did that. Go and look and actually see and compare their records. Go and do your own research. Don't just do it because if you go watch the the candidate forum on the local news station, that's great. That's step one. At least you know who's running. But you got that's the way I don't have time, or it doesn't interest me. You see that pisses me off so badly. But you don't have interest in your own well-being and future. You don't have interest in the future of your children or the children that you don't even have born yet. Yeah, it's incredible. Or I didn't have time to vote. My vote doesn't matter. Okay, maybe it doesn't matter at the higher levels. You don't think with the Electoral College, with the presidential race, but the local municipality races where you're voting for the same damn mayor that you've had for 30 years or something like that, and the town hasn't gotten any better. Or at the basic, at the end of the day, maybe you get a stoplight changed over to a stop sign. What I'm getting at here, guys, if you don't get involved, and as I just said earlier, if you don't get involved, you don't actually try to actively change things, it's going to leave a void. And it's going to leave a void? It's going to lead a void to the people who aren't prepared and who aren't qualified to be running things. And that's just why we have such a shitty slate of candidates this year. And like I said, guys, disappointed in a lot of folks. Those of you who I'm talking about know who you are. And if you got a problem with it, let me know. I don't rightly care. Like I said, I care more about this country continuing than I do about some, whatever. Like I said, it's about health and prosperity and equity of opportunity for all people, not just the people who agree with what you have to say. And like these people that are running for office, listen, anybody that is running for office right now, I want you to listen to me. When you are elected, regardless of what you said in the primary, regardless of what you said on the campaign trail about Democrats, Republicans, or whomever, they are now your constituents. They are now they are now your boss. All right? And whether you stay in office or not depends on if you serve all of them equally. Not just the men, not just the women, not just the Democrats, not just the Republicans. Everybody. Everybody. And that's just what I'm getting at, guys. Like I said, I'm about compassion, but that doesn't mean we need to be a weak, soft society. You can still be an alpha male hunter, Jack, Chad, bro if you want to be. But you can have compassion and you can have respect. And that's where I'm going to leave you guys with This Is at 26. That's where I'm at. That's what I want for the next year and for my elected officials. And perhaps maybe it's just the point in time where I become an elected official. If as I'm saying, maybe I need to get off my keister, once I have a little bit more free time here, and and just do it myself. I'll do it myself. The old adage there. So, thank you guys for listening to this episode. Like I said, it's been a very freestyle, riffy type episode, and things got a little serious there at the end. But I appreciate all of you tuning in, and like I said, big things to come here in the next few months here, and then the next new year coming up for the podcast. And so, just trying to give you guys the best quality piece of content I can. And so thank you for listening to this episode and to me rant here and there. And so keep up to date with all of our happenings on social media, DuView 207 on Instagram, and the DuView podcast everywhere else, and on your favorite listening platform. Feel free to give us a thumbs up or any type of like or comments on YouTube, a review or any type of that on any of the podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of that type of stuff helps us with the algorithms and helps us stay relevant, helps us expand and get to more ears. So thank you guys for anybody who left a review or shares or does anything, because like I said, I can't get any bigger without the support of all of you listening. So that being said, guys, thank you for tuning in, and we'll check in with you guys here in another couple weeks.